On the Wind is sponsored by 59 North's very own Quarterdeck. The Quarterdeck is a membership website and 59 North's home port on the internet. We post videos and articles and host live streams and all sorts of fun on there, and we have a very knowledgeable community that you can be part of. Go to 59-north.com/quarterdeck and sign up today for a 2-week free trial. Becoming a Quarterdeck member is also a great way to support what we do so that we can continue to make free sailing content such as this very podcast. So thanks to everyone who signs up. Hope to see you there. Hey, On the Wind listeners, it's Emma. Today's episode is with our very own Andy Schell. I've been wanting to interview Andy on his own podcast for a long time, and we finally lined it up just in time for us to reflect on the last 10 years of 59 North. They started the company in 2015, so this is the 10th sailing season, and a lot has changed over that time. It was really fun to catch up with Andy and hear about all the changes in his life and in the company over the last decade. And just to, do what Andy does best and get deep and talk about personal things and growth and leadership. It's a really good one. And I'm really grateful that Andy let me turn the tables on him and ask him some questions. All right, Andy's going to talk about some 59 North related stuff. But until next time, hold fast.
Hey friends, welcome back to On the Wind. Thanks to Emma for that nice little preamble there. It was awesome to chat with her, and it was interesting timing because there's a lot going on in my personal life right now that is changing the way I think about how I want my life to work. We talked about work-life balance and how I never needed to think about that before, and now I do. So I'll save that for the interview that comes, but Emma did a really good job interviewing me, and I enjoyed talking to her about this. By the time you listen to this, I'll be on Falcon with Mia, ironically. It's good timing for this episode because it's our first trip that we're doing together since Axel was born. We're sailing from Amsterdam to Marstrand on the west coast of Sweden. Super, super, super excited to sail. Actually, Mia and I have never sailed Falcon together, like work-wise. I mean, we've sailed on board together, of course, but never where I'm the skipper, she's the mate, and we've got paying crew on board. So really excited for that. When we get to Sweden, those of you who are in Sweden or nearby, the boat's going to be in the Öppet Varv boat show on Orust. That's at the Hallberg Grassi factory. It's such a fun boat show, and Falcon's actually going to be there, so you can come see us, see the boat, get a tour, and hang out. That's the weekend of August 24th and 25th. I think it's actually 3 days, 23, 24, 25. So come check that out. And I think we're winding down the season. 2 more trips on Falcon this year, and Eastbjorn's got 1 more trip. So if you want to come sailing with us, there's some openings next year. In fact, I think we're going to change one of the routes in California. I believe we're actually going to go from San Francisco to Ensenada, Mexico, instead of San Diego. So look for that on the website. There's some openings for that, I know, on Falcon. There's some Eastbjorn openings next year, and both boats have lots of openings in 2026. So it's going great here at 59 North. I wish we had more stuff to offer people that want to sail with us because it's filling up fast. But hey, you never know. I talk about that in today's episode with Emma about growing the business and all the rest of that. And you know me, I'm always looking for the next thing. So we'll see how it goes. But all right, enough rambling. Enjoy the episode with me and Emma, and I'll talk to you later.
You're listening to On the Wind, the podcast about sailing. I'm your host, Emma Garshagen.
Andy Schell should need no introduction on his own podcast, but he is the founder and host of this On the Wind sailing podcast. He's also the co-founder of 59 North. He's an offshore sailor. He's a father, a golfer, a Lego enthusiast, a deep feeler and deep thinker, and so much more. Thanks, Andy. Hey, Andy.
Hi, Emma.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Home alone, single parenting right now.
Yeah, how's that going?
It's fun. It's Axel's more and more fun to actually hang out with now as he gets older.
Yeah.
So we've been doing stuff, and he's in school right now. But no,
Yeah.
it's pretty mellow. Pretty mellow.
Good. I just got unstable internet notification. Okay, it should be fine. Tell me if I'm getting choppy, but
You're fine on my end, but I will.
okay. Cool. Okay, well, let's dive in because we have some time, but we don't have all day.
I promised Axel I'd pick him up on the bike today, so I have to give myself enough time to do that. It's cool. But hang on, before we start, you have to for the audio listeners, you got to tell people where you're recording from, because I've been there before and it's hilarious.
I'm sitting in my boyfriend's car. I'm on Martha's Vineyard living on my boat this week. And it's so rolly in the anchorage that it was like I was going to get seasick recording on the boat. And it was so loud, like everything's crashing around on board. So yeah, I came ashore and I'm recording in a car, which apparently is something that audio producers recommend if you don't have a quiet space. So this probably sounds better than... Yeah.
I was going to say, it's an acoustically nice place. So there
exactly.
You go.
Yeah, I know.
Cool.
And, yeah, I know. We'll see if people walk by and think I'm crazy, but yeah.
That'll be they'll think you're crazy for other reasons.
Yeah, and you're in mission control in Sweden right now.
I am, yeah. It's beautiful. It's summertime. I'm so spoiled with Sweden summer. It's like 75 degrees today and it feels hot.
Yeah.
It's like perfect.
That's awesome. I know. Nice. I've been enjoying that about Maine. If it's over 80, it's like a little much for me. And we've had some days like that, but it's been pretty good.
Yeah, God forbid you break a sweat.
I know, exactly. No, thank you. Well, Andy, you've interviewed me twice now on this podcast. And there are some interviews of you on your podcast. There's one from 2016 that I found with this guy who had a podcast called like Sailing Loot. Someone named Teddy.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay.
That was an old
a long
one.
Time ago.
That was fun to listen to. And yeah. And so you've been interviewed before and you've been interviewing and you also have told your story. Like, I feel like I've heard your story in lots of different iterations in podcasts that you've done and also just having known you for so long now. But I've wanted to interview you for a long time because like, yeah, it's your show and you're the one who behind all of this and it's fun to turn the tables and get to ask you the questions. And like, I think you're getting very close to it being the 10-year anniversary of starting 59 North, right?
Well, yeah, this is our 10th this is our 10th season.
Yeah.
So I guess in 2025 will be 10 years if you count the years. We started in 2015.
Yeah.
Our first trip was in 2015.
Yeah.
So yeah, next year will be our 10-year anniversary. I'm not sure how that works. It is already our 10th season, but yeah, 10 years.
I know that's like birthdays, like you're like that too. But yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah, year zero, 2015 is year zero, I guess, or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But what's interesting, you know, I have been interviewed a bunch before, and obviously most people know my story. But there's whether you. Well, I'm excited to see what questions you ask me, but there is some like new like parts of the story that only recently have sort of been on my mind. So I'm excited to talk about that as well.
Oh, cool.
This is going to be like a therapy session for me, I think.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm really curious what you want to talk about, but I'm going to ask you, I wanted to start just sort of with how 59 North started, because I feel like that's a story I've heard many times, but I kind of want to like trace it back a little further because there's something you've said many times, which is basically like, this is all I've ever really wanted to do, or like, this is the only thing I've wanted to be doing. And this has been the goal the whole time. Like it seems like you've been focused on taking people ocean sailing as a business for more than 10 years now. But I'm sort of curious where that started. And you've also credited like this sort of career path to being connected back to sailing with your family on their boat and sailing with your parents and sister in the Bahamas. And you said something in the interview I listened to that I really liked, where you said, "Those are my first and strongest memories of being a human, and I'm positive that's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today." So yeah, I want to just like ask you about that sort of like arc of like sailing as a kid to being like, all I ever wanted to do is start this business. Where did the idea actually start, do you think?
It's funny you bring up the Bahamas thing because I was actually talking to my dad on the phone yesterday about being a dad, kind of. And I was like, because it like dawned on me that I'm going to answer your question in a roundabout way, but it's dawned on me this week. First of all, this is the first time I've been home with Axel in the summertime, like when Mia's been away, and he's getting older and stuff. And I'm just like, man, what am I going to do with him like day to day? Like, it's like I had 4 days in a row, a long weekend. I was like, man, we got to like come up with stuff to do. And then I was talking to my dad, like, how much time did we actually spend as kids on the boat? And like, how did you guys do that when I was super little and all the rest of that stuff? Because like a 4-year-old has an attention span of about 30 seconds. So you're just bouncing from one thing to the next. And I'm just like, man, these are long days. But anyway, my dad said to me that like when we were growing up, I was never interested in how the boat like worked from a technical standpoint. I liked all that, but I remember that. I remember my dad telling me that before. And my friend Adam, who's a pilot, who also kind of grew up sailing with, we'd bring friends down and stuff when we were kids. He was more technically interested than I was. And my dad said I was never that interested at all. I had a good time being there and doing stuff, but I didn't care that much about the actual sailing. And I've said before that like I didn't really learn. I mean, obviously I learned from my parents how to sail or how to, I guess I learned from my parents like the cruising lifestyle. And I learned how to sail technically when I worked in the woodwind. Yeah, because they were like really good technical sailors. But where the idea for the business came, I guess tracing it back, I did a senior. I think it was in high school. It was either high school or middle school. I did a project for something that basically involved. It was like I made this like big poster board thing or like a board thing that had all the knots on it. Oh yeah. And my dad helped me with that, and we did this like all these nautical knots and stuff. And I don't remember being that interested in boating or sailing at that point in my life, but for some reason I made that thing for some project. So there was something back there even at that time. Yeah. And then the idea for the business, really, I was inspired into ocean sailing specifically just by reading like the old timey books. Yeah. Like my parents had, Lynn and Larry Party on their bookshelf in the basement. A lot of the books that are in Mission Control right now, actually, I stole from my dad's house. So, the Parties, Hal Roth, these old like cruising stories from the 60s and 70s, which was like super inspiring. And then my friend Pete from the Woodwind gave me one of John Kretschmer's books about being a delivery captain. I think it was called Flirting with Mermaids. And that's like the first time I was like, oh, this like ocean sailing, like here's like a career path maybe. Yeah. And I don't, and that was, I mean, my first ocean passage was in 2007. Can you talk about what that was like? I feel like I don't know that I know about what that experience was for you. Well, that was way before I had any ideas of starting a business, but I will say like even from early on, I always did things with the idea that I was going to do something bigger with it. So for example, like I worked on the Woodwind and that was like a stepping stone, which I didn't even know where it was going, but I knew it was like I was gaining experience and knowledge to do something else down the line. Yeah. So like first summer was Woodwind. On the Woodwind, I met this guy, Jordan, who was one of the crew that first summer, and he worked for Broadreach. Right. That's what was my introduction to Broadreach. I was like, whoa, this is cool. So then after my second summer at Woodwind, so the third summer I was working as a sailor, I was like, I got a job at Broadreach as a skipper. That was my first skipper job in 2008. And then like I kind of went from that into like doing the world cruising event stuff. Just, it was all kind of serendipitous. But I like used that to like network to like find delivery opportunities. And when Mia and I sailed Arcturus across the Atlantic, that was always with the idea that like, well, let's just do this now. We have no money. We have no jobs, but let's just do this because it's going to allow us to put something on our resume like, hey, we did this. Yeah. We took our own boat, we refitted it, we sailed across the Atlantic, we did it on our own. Like that's going to give us experience. So like everything I did along the way was leading towards something. And then I'll come back to the offshore thing, but there's a moment that I can remember. It was around Christmas time in 2013. I think it was 2013. When I sat down, it was when Mia and I had the house in Lancaster. I sat down on my computer and I was like, if we bought our own boat, what's the minimum number of trips we would have to run in a year in order to make, I think I used $70,000 as like, that's like, I read something somewhere that like happiness increases up to $70,000 and then it levels off. Like you don't need more money than that if you want to be happy.
Yeah. I remember
so
that
I
one.
use that as like, all right, well, if we're going to do this, we can create this lifestyle for ourselves. That's cool. But also we can make some money. And like, if we make $70,000, that's like the magic number. And I made a spreadsheet. I probably still have that spreadsheet somewhere. And that was like the original vision for 59 North, basically, is run these trips and see if we can do it. And you and I have talked offline about this, but like when we bought Eastbjorn, it was like it was way more money than I'd ever seen in my life at that point. We paid $130,000 for the boat, got a loan, sold Arcturus and sold our house to help pay for the boat. But like the fallback was like, well, all right, we're both smart, educated people. If this doesn't work, we'll own a boat that we can just live on and maintain and work normal jobs doing whatever. It wasn't like now where's Falcon. It's like if the business fails now, I have $1 million boat that I'm not gonna be able to pay for.
Yeah, totally.
I know. I want totally different stakes.
Yeah. No, a lot has changed. I want to talk about that too as we go. Like now that we're sort of at this like 10-year milestone, like just how much has changed in that time. But yeah, do you remember that delivery to Tortola in 2007 and like what it felt like to be offshore for the first time? And you were like, it was like I think your dad came along, but it was like you were sort of delivering the boat, but like that must have been.
We were both volunteer crew. I remember it very like vividly because it was, what's the guy's name? The guy that founded Steve Black. He passed away several years ago now, but he was the guy that founded the Caribbean 1500. I had gotten to know him somehow. I don't even know how to. I forget. But anyway, he said he knew I wanted to get into ocean sailing, and he said, hey, there's a boat that's joining the Caribbean 1500 rally, but they're coming from Charleston to BVI. They need crew. Do you want to go? I was like, hell yeah, when? He's like, be there tomorrow. And I was in Annapolis. My dad was at home. I called my dad. I was like, hey, you want to do this delivery with me? And he's like, yeah, when? I was like, tomorrow. So he like drove to Annapolis that day. We rented a car, drove down to Charleston, and got on the boat the next day. And it was me, my dad, this like French guy skipper, and then the owner's daughter came along. It was a non-sailor. Mm-hmm. And I remember we left Charleston Harbor, and I was so excited. I had never been out of sight of land before. So the first day was like flat calm. There was like a kind of a big heaving swell coming in off the ocean, but no wind. So we motored. And I just remember I kept looking over my shoulder to like see if I could, when the land was going to disappear. And then when the land disappeared over the horizon, I was like, this is the fucking coolest thing ever. I fucking can't believe this. It was so cool. Like that moment for me was like, God, this is everything I dreamed about. This is it right here.
Do you still feel that when you're offshore?
Yes, not that specific, like, oh, now we're out of sight of land.
Yeah.
But I definitely still feel that excitement.
Yeah.
And I think now the specific feeling I get being out of sight of land is I can relax.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Like I can just be like, which is why I like, you and me were talking last, when I interviewed you, I think it's like what you do is in a way more stressful than what we do because you've got a lot of stuff. You know, I can go down below and sleep and not really worry about much.
Yeah.
Whereas you can't.
Yeah.
Coastal stuff. And I was reminded of that on Spica. I just did a couple trips on Spica here in the Baltic, and it's like, oh yeah, this isn't ocean sailing. There's a lot more going on here.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. But, and like I can still like get emails and stuff, which is sort of stupid.
But the funny thing is about that first trip, like that was amazing. And then it was 13 days, maybe 11 days. It was a long time. It was a 40-foot boat, freaking upwind the entire way. My dad and I were in the V-berth. It was this has never happened before or since, where I went to sleep in the V-berth and woke up seasick like 4 hours later because I was like airborne half the time. And that it was to this day probably the worst trip I've ever done. And for other reasons too. Like the captain, he was this like, he was fine. He was a nice guy. What was stupid was the daughter of this owner no, not the daughter, a friend of the daughter's friend of the owner's daughter came along, and like midway through the trip, they like started sleeping in the same cabin.
Oh no!
And it got super awkward, super awkward. I'm not sure I've ever told this story on the podcast, but like I came up like it wasn't my watch yet, but I came up, just stuck my head out the cockpit. and like the autopilot's on. He's sitting in the cockpit on the one seat. She's got her legs in his lap, and he's like with an electric razor shaving her legs.
Oh my God.
I'm like, what is happening? I just like immediately went back down below. I was like, Dad, don't go outside. It was so gross.
Oh, it's so funny.
And the most frustrating thing was my dad and I are like sharing the V berth, and meanwhile there's two quarter berth cabins on this boat. She's in one, he's in the other, but she'd been sleeping in his cabin like for 4 days, and her cabin's empty. It's like the best bunk on the boat, and it's empty. So anyway, it was just a miserable trip because it was upwind the whole time. It was pretty fun. We got closer to the islands. Wind finally died, and we stopped for a swim. That was like my first big offshore swim. That was cool. And then when we got to it, I mean, this is like kind of happens every trip too. We got to Tortola. My dad and I got off the boat, went to the bar and got like a rum and pineapple, and just like basically like, okay, was the trip fun or is this fun?
Yeah.
Like sitting at the bar drinking and talking about how shitty it was. What are we actually here for?
Oh, that's funny. But you did that and like wanted more.
Oh, hell yeah. And like very quickly, I mean, I've always been like, whether I have good leadership skills or not, I've always wanted to be in charge. And I immediately like wanted, like, how can I do this? And how can I be the captain? How can I be the captain so I can pick the crew and pick the trips and all the rest of that stuff? Yeah. So, and it happened pretty quickly because like I just kept asking around and would do stuff for free. I mean, that trip was for free. I'm sure I did my first couple of deliveries for free, and then it just kind of all just, you know, word of mouth started happening, which was super cool. I really miss those delivery days, actually. I mean, so I don't even know if you know this, but you know our friends Tom and Darlene and Lee and Rachel. Well, I met both of them through deliveries.
Oh,
like they knew me because they both had listened to the podcast. But like Lee, I think I met him first. He just out of the blue, he's like, "Hey, I'd love to like do a delivery with you." And I was like, all right, hey, I got one coming up. Let's go. Oh, cool. And then same thing with Tom. Tom came to a talk Mia and I did at Fawcett's in Annapolis about our transatlantic on Arcturus, and that's how we met there. And then like so I miss the days where it's like me, Lee, Tom, and my dad would like jump on some random boat and deliver it somewhere. Yeah. And like I was getting paid for that. None of those guys were. But like that was super fun and a way different adventure than what we do now, where we actually have to take care of people that are paying to be there. Yeah. So I have fond nostalgia for those days, but you know, it's not all great, obviously, because you never knew what was coming next, and it was very inconsistent work, low pay, boats were shitty, all the rest. Yeah. But the aspect of like sailing with your friends on it felt more like an adventure because you didn't know what you were going to get. You know. Yeah. We did a delivery of a Gulfstar 60 from Annapolis up to East Hampton on like the backside of Long Island, and the boat, like nothing worked. It was a cool boat, but man, nothing worked. And we ran out of fuel within like 200 yards from the dock, and had to get like towed in the last 200 yards.
That's funny. Yeah, so, that's all such great experience.
Lots of fun stories like that.
Yeah. Do you feel like as a kid, did you also want to be a leader, or like is that something that like started young, or did it come later?
I think it came later. I was a really shy kid and like would always have to wait and watch and kind of get a sense for what was going on before I joined anything, like whether it was like a kid's birthday party or like a game of flag football or whatever. Like, and I didn't, this is not quite on the leadership thing, but like to tell you how sort of conservative I was as a kid. I did not go on an upside down roller coaster until I was 18.
I've never been on a roller coaster, but I think
weird.
Where you're from, that's weird.
Maybe. I mean, I live near Hershey Park.
Exactly.
And like,
exactly.
So like, I didn't go on, I think the first one, I think this was at Hershey Park. Maybe it was at Knoebels. I forget, but there's two like theme parks near where we live. And the one was called the Super Duper Looper, and it did like one upside down loop. And I was like terrified to go on that until I was like 18. I don't think I was.
What changed that made you feel like you wanted to be a leader or could be?
What changed? I'm not sure what changed. I guess, well, this is what comes to mind. I think actually what changed, just that gave me confidence. This has nothing to do with leadership or sailing or anything. I was like really overweight as a kid. I was a fat kid. I weighed 260 pounds when I was a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And when I was 18, my senior year, my mom was super healthy. I was like, Mom, like, I don't like being fat. You got to help me lose weight. So like I lost almost 100 pounds. I got like unhealthily like too skinny when I was like a freshman in college. But basically like getting fit and healthy gave me a confidence that I never had before.
Yeah.
Like you're getting the deep version here now. And I've never talked about this. But like I never had a girlfriend in high school, none of that. And like all of a sudden you move away, you go to college. I'm like physically a different person. I am mentally a different person because like I'm out. I don't have my friends. You can be like a new person. That's kind of what attracted me to travel as well.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden like girls started liking me and like I had a girlfriend and I was like, wait a second here, what's happening? And that gave me confidence. And then I guess my first real leadership experience was like sophomore year in college at Penn State. I just put I was trying to like join clubs and do stuff, be active. And there wasn't a ski club. I was into snow skiing in high school and stuff. There was no there was a snowboard club, but no ski club. So I like fuck it. Like I'll make one. So I put up a poster in the what is it called? I forget what it's called now. People at Penn State are gonna kill me. But wherever the main like lunch cafeteria thing was, I put up a poster like, hey, who wants to join a ski club? And several people responded, one of whom became like my first real serious girlfriend who I was with for several years, and two other guys who became like my best friends in college. We just started the ski club, and that's kind of was like it. That was like the first, in a way, like my first business. It wasn't a business. It was like a organization that now still exists.
That's cool.
Like 20 years later, and like still going strong.
Brought people together, and like that's what you still are doing with 59 North is like bringing people together who, then end up like being close friends of yours and of each other's, and like building community that way.
If you want to analyze it, like nothing has changed. The only like we went to Bergen last week to have both boats there and the whole staff, and like I have a really hard time, like this, I don't like being the boss. I like being in charge, but I don't like I want there to be like, I know this is impossible, but I want there to be like a flat hierarchy. Like I want to be friends with everyone, but you still have to be, I am literally the boss. So like, but last week in Bergen, it was like that same thing. I have a hard time, I think I have a hard time giving people feedback because I just want everyone to be friends and happy all the time as well.
Yeah.
And that same thing, that was ski club. It was just a way for me to meet people and do cool stuff. I mean, that's really, nothing's changed. All I want to do is do cool things with fun people. Yeah. Really.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like, it makes a lot of sense that I remember you telling me about that change of like having that dramatic physical change when you lost all that weight at also such a pivotal age. Like there's so much transition at that time, and it already feels like, you go to college and you can be a different person, but you like looked like a different, like you just had such a huge change. It must have been like kind of a roller coaster.
Well, even beyond that, I transferred schools. I went to, I went to college for professional golf management.
Right.
I was
in South Carolina, right?
Yeah. At this place called Coastal Carolina in Myrtle Beach.
Yeah.
And, I hated it. But in hindsight, I just didn't give it enough time. I was so out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I just didn't allow myself to be out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
The other thing, like I didn't drink alcohol in high school. Like I went to a party at Coastal Carolina, and like someone handed me a red Solo cup full of beer. And I was like, all right, play it cool. But I didn't want to drink it. So I just pretended to drink a beer at this like college party. I was such a loser.
Yeah. I mean, also like,
it was very cute.
You're also
very
a
cute.
kid. Yeah. Like that's
It just, none of my friends, like all my friends in high school, like we had so much wholesome fun. Like it was never even like a thing. Like we didn't even think about alcohol. We didn't even, it was never a thing.
Yeah. You were like playing mini golf and
we were playing mini golf and basketball and stuff. Like it was great.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
fishing on the golf course in the middle of the night. Like it was so stupid. The wholesome stuff we did.
Yeah.
But then in college, I didn't give it a chance. And I think I like panicked and and wanted to transfer like immediately.
Yeah.
And I don't regret that, but I do. Even by the like, I'd made this decision pretty early on. I came home for Thanksgiving, and I went to. I was going to transfer to Lehigh, actually, in Pennsylvania, and which is like a fancy, like expensive private school. And I went up to Penn State to visit my two best friends from high school and go to a football game. And I hated everything about Penn State. I was not and still am not a Penn State fanboy. Like, I had a great experience there. I liked the place, but like not one of those Penn State people. But I went up there and I was like, God damn. And Penn State was one of the schools I had applied to and gotten in and was just like, I could go there whenever I wanted to. There was no application. I could just go. And I was like, shit, I guess I have to come here. Like, this is so fun. I have to come here.
You're like
so
with
I
your
ended up
two closest friends from, too. Like,
who are still two of my best friends.
Yeah.
To this day. So
yeah.
So I went there and but I think like by the end of that first semester at Coastal, I'd actually started making friends, and I think like I would have been fine.
Yeah. That's hard to know though. If you like, your dad still lives in the house you grew up in. Like, there wasn't like that much change. I guess going to the Bahamas and sailing was like a different thing that you guys did. But like, yeah, if your whole life is like, my family moved a couple times when I was growing up. So I feel like that helped. I was still homesick in college, but like, it's definitely helped to like understand like, oh, okay, like things change. You have to make new friends. Like that's like,
I grew up in Pixieland. I've joked. We all joked about it. We call everything was perfect. Like we lived a perfect childhood. And like, yeah, it's funny though. Cause like now I've never really made this connection before, but that sort of false start at Coastal was just like a preview. Cause then I started traveling. I did a semester abroad and now I live in Sweden.
Right. Like, exactly. Like you've changed. Yeah. There's been so much change in your life. And I wanted to ask you, I was going to ask you this later, but I wanted to ask you about living in Sweden too. Like, I know you moved to Sweden for a little bit when you and Mia were dating early on, and then you guys moved back to the States and like eventually landed in Sweden pretty close to her parents and now raising Axel there. And I know there's like, so many more social services in Sweden for having a kid. So like, that's huge. But how is that? Like, where are you in that transition now of like living full time in a different country, and you're home so much more now, like than you were when you guys were sailing initially? Like, you've created a life where you can be home with Axel for an extended period of time. Like, yeah, what's it like living there?
Well, this is getting into the stuff that I teased at the top of this that I haven't talked about. I think, well, it's very different. So to just zoom out for a second, like, we moved. I said when I first met Mia in New Zealand, I think one of the first things I said to her when we started talking about like, are we going to try to like stay together while we're doing this long distance relationship? And I was like, yeah, fine, but like I'll move to Sweden, like easy, 100%. So like right off the bat, that was like the goal. And when we moved back to the U.S., we did so in order for Mia to get her citizenship to allow us to travel freely. So that was never, ever meant to be a permanent move to the U.S. We had to stay 5 years and live there 5 years to get her passport so that we could then live in either country freely. Because if we lived in Sweden, she'd lose her green card because that's like residency. You have to all this immigration stuff, super annoying. But so that's what we did with the idea that we were always going to move back to Sweden eventually. Fast forward to now, what has really dramatically, I feel foolish saying this because everyone says, oh, your life's going to change in ways you can't even predict when you have kids. Well, they were all right. Like, I am really thinking hard about how to reconcile the fact that this life that I told you we set out to build, how many trips we have to do in a year at that house in Lancaster, is completely... That doesn't apply anymore because that was Mia and me together traveling, doing fun stuff. Yep. Now, as I speak, she's away on the boat headed to Amsterdam. We're taking turns. I'm now basically a lonely single parent living in the middle of nowhere in a foreign country where I don't have that many friends. I don't have any family here. And I find myself bored sometimes at home. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wow, like what I thought we could do. I thought when we had Axel, and I've talked about this in the podcast that like I had this romantic vision where like, okay, if Mia's away, then me and Axel and I will fly down to meet her when the boat comes in, and then we'll spend some time living on the boat and then transition between trips and da-da-da-da. Well, whether it's all kids or specifically Axel, it just doesn't work. It's too hard for everyone. It's too hard on us as a family. It's too hard on Axel traveling. He struggles with transitions. So like every time, like it's like we go to the US with him, besides the jet lag, it's 2 or 3 days until he like finds his footing with his routines and all the rest of that. And
Totally.
it's just, we're finally realizing that like, man, we got to really, really, really slow down our lifestyle here. And I don't know how I feel about that. I feel okay because I'm in a really good place mentally right now, but I could, if I had this realization 2-3 years ago, man, I think I'd have been panicking.
Well, yeah, and I know 2 or 3 years ago, like, I remember you talking a lot about feeling like you hadn't found your place in your home in Sweden yet, like that where you lived was maybe a problem or just wasn't like settling for you. And I feel like there have been some changes in that in the last year for you that seem positive.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, I've talked about this too. I joined a CrossFit gym in September, specifically not necessarily to meet people and make friends, but to be around people. Because like I have a gym in one of the barns here where we live, but it's like working out on your own. You don't get a good exercise. It's just boring. Yeah. So Mia had been encouraging me for years. She's like, I think you'd really like it. And I did. And I made some friends, and that's really, really, really changed my perspective. I mean, I've told you this off the record before that like the difference in my mental health, all the things I've done from being on antidepressants to I've quit coffee again. I don't know if I told you that. I'm off of that now. And like all these things have been like incremental changes to the better. But finding that community that I'm now a part of has been like a huge exponential change in my happiness at home. And
and that's something, Andy, that I've been noticing in myself recently that has made me think of you, is that like you and I are both people who need alone time. And I remember a handful of years ago, maybe when we were starting to work together, you were identifying that alone time was like something that you needed to protect for yourself, which I totally feel. And especially like getting off of a trip where you're taking care of other people all the time, like you need alone time after that. But something I've been realizing is like, I think I actually need more like social friend time than I thought. Like, I think sometimes I think the solution is alone time. And then I like hang out with friends and I'm like, oh, wait, no, it wasn't that I needed to be like completely alone. I needed to be around people who I love and who like, it's going from being around clients all the time, even though they're wonderful. It's being around people who you can be yourself around, fully 100% yourself. Yeah.
It's so funny that you brought this up because I sent literally last week, I sent this quote that I found to Nikki, who I think shares these sentiments with you and me. But the quote was, you think you're an introvert because you like being alone, but in reality, you just love being at peace. You're actually extroverted around people who bring you peace. And I was like, bingo.
Yeah,
like that's
totally
100% correct. And then another one too, which was like, another fun quote I sent to Nikki: stop playing it cool, just be passionate and intense and insane, and whoever sticks around is meant for you. And I like that.
That's a good that's a good transition to another question I have for you, because you can
hold that thought. I have more to say on this community thing, because I still like it's been a huge change, but it's still just like a small thing. And I'm, it's like they're new friends. I still don't have my like day to day. Like I really miss, I'm jealous that Mia, when she's here by herself, can just go up to her mom's and hang out with her parents and Axel. I don't get to do that with my dad.
Yeah.
Like I do it, in very intense, I live at his house for 3-4 weeks in October. And like, that's not the same because it's stressful living with your parents, especially with your partner and stuff. So like, yeah. I miss that, and I still haven't 100% found my footing. I was really inspired when I did, I sailed Spica. Well, we tried to do Gotland Runt this year and quit because the weather was too bad, but one of the race directors is also from Enköping, where I live, and he came and talked to me after the race. And like being out there in Sandhamn in this Swedish sailing community, which I only haven't really become a part of, that was really inspiring. So I'm like, want to get more involved with sailing here locally. And I'm probably going to start doing 1 or 2 trips a year on Spica closer to home to sort of reconcile this. All right, if I can't be, I think like my schedule for next year, I'm supposed to be on Falcon for 8 weeks. I think that's too long now with Axel. He's getting older and gets sad when we leave, gets angry at us when we get back, and classic, small kid things. Of course he is.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, well, maybe I can be away for 3 to 4 weeks at a time instead of 6 to 8 weeks. Have to kind of scale that back, but like that's not going to satisfy enough. So what can I do closer to home that's easier? And all this is a work in progress. This is the first time I've talked about it. But it really is trying to figure out now what is the next phase of like this lifestyle that we've tried to create through building this business that is centered around that. Yeah. And I don't know what that's going to look like yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's a moving target. Like one of my questions that I have for you is like about work-life balance. Like I'm curious what that means to you. And I think it's probably, I mean, you've already been saying like, it's probably evolved. Like it meant a different thing when it was just you and Mia on Eastbjorn than it does now. But
well, the whole point of 59 North in the initial iteration was to not distinguish the two. Work was life. That was the whole point. The whole point. And for the first time now, I am actually having to separate the two. In day to day, I've got to end this interview in 45 minutes because I have to go pick up Axel, and I cannot work when he's around. I just can't. Like, not that I don't want to. I physically can't. He can't. He needs my attention, and he won't let me work. I can't be distracted around him, which has been really good for me to like focus on being in the moment more. Yeah. But then we were supposed to take him to Bergen on this 2-boat thing last week, and we ended up deciding not to leave him with Mia's parents because it was just those transitions again are too hard for him and for us, and it was a very good decision. But it was the first time. It's like, all right, well, we're now in Bergen working, and we left our life back home. It still feels like work doesn't feel like work. I still love what we do so much. And that's what makes it so hard to separate the two. Because I love work a lot more than I love my life right now. If that makes sense. Like my life outside of work, now that I'm having to separate those two things, I'm having to figure out what I want that to look like. What do I want my life outside of work to look like? What is it? What do I actually want to live here in Sweden if I'm going to have to be home 9 months of the year instead of 3? What do I don't have an answer to that yet, but that's the next challenge, I think, is figuring out what my non-work life is going to be, because all of a sudden I have one.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has been, that's so interesting, Andy, because it has been like, I feel like you have often embodied the like, if you do what you love, you never work a day in your life kind of thing.
I still believe that. And I still believe that like you should work with your friends because that's who you spend your most time with. All that sort of businessy stuff. Don't work with it's bullshit. Like do what you love and work with your friends and you'll have fun.
Yeah. And that still feels true.
Oh, 100%. So much so that that's what's making it so hard to separate them, because that's what I love the most. That's what I would choose to be doing. Yeah. And like, it's going to be impossible for me to not make this sound like it's way worse than I mean, but it's almost making me question. I didn't think through what it would be like having kids enough. Yeah. And it's not that I'm questioning having kids. I would never trade it for anything, but I find myself in a position where I have to kind of start from scratch now. Yeah. I have a different life than I had before. And everyone that has kids is like, yeah, no shit, you idiot. But like, well, I don't know. What I know is I actually texted Ben Doer yesterday from Sale Bainbridge, friend of the podcast, because I was like, hey man, I need to have a dad chat with you about all this stuff, because his kids are older. And that's what I was going to say, is I know that I don't have to create this, whatever I'm trying to figure out now is only going to be valid for like 6 months or a year, because Axel's growing and changing. So what do I want, not necessarily my whole life to look like, but what do I want the next year to look like? Let's do that one thing at a time. And see how it goes. And then, all right, next year, what's different? What do we want next year to look like? So that's, but that's been a challenging thing. I still believe the work life thing, I don't think you should have to necessarily separate them, but I actually have to for like practical reasons now. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you've always been good at changing, like it's something I want to talk about is like the business has changed so much in the last 10 years. And I think of you as like being one of the most like decisive and determined people that I know. Like if you want to do something, you're going to do it no matter what. And if you change your mind.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Axel is exactly the same way.
I'm
So
sure he is.
being a dad to him when you want him to do what you want him to do, but it's like I can't blame him. Like, good on you, mate. Like you're gonna be fine as an adult. But like, let's tone it down. Let's like chill out a little bit now while I'm in charge.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah. Well, yeah. And you're like, I mean, I'm curious where like, were you like that as a kid? Were you super determined and like stubborn, or no?
I don't. You'd have to ask my dad. I don't think
Yeah,
so.
I should.
I think I was a pretty mellow kid, as I recall. But
Yeah.
and I was a huge rule follower as a kid, but a rule follower with like the understanding that if I followed the rules, that would give me more freedom. So, for
Right.
example, when I first started driving, my parents got me a cell phone, and they're like, "You can drive, you can go see your friends. We just need to know where you are and who you're with all the time." So I always made sure they know where I am, who I'm with, and that gave me the freedom to do whatever. My sister she tried to get things around my parents, and therefore had a lot less freedom than me. She's 2 years younger than me, because she just didn't follow that simple rule. And like even in school, I was a very good kid in school, and I did whatever I wanted to. I was very, very lucky that I was just generally intelligent. I never had to work hard in school, so I could be the good kid and get good grades without even trying.
Yeah. I think we're
so it
similar
gave me
in that. I feel
time
like I
to
was
do whatever.
Yeah. I feel like I got away with a lot of stuff in high school because I was like an A student and was nice and followed the rules, but then like, could have more freedom from it.
But me, like my version of getting away with stuff is the assistant principal let me leave school early one afternoon when I was a senior to go play golf with Papap. Like that's me getting away with something. It's not, it's not like I was going out and causing trouble at all. It was just, but that's the freedom I wanted. I was like, hey, can I, it's end of senior year. I have nothing to do. Can you let me leave after lunch so I can go golfing with Papap? They're like, yeah, go ahead, whatever.
Yeah. I was thinking about how, and I feel like I've heard you talk about this, how both your dad and your grandfather, like actively chose not to make their hobby or their passion their job. Like Papap has had his horses and Dennis has sailing, but neither of them did that for work. And I'm wondering why you chose to go the other way.
I think horses. I'll separate my dad and my grandfather, Papap, my dad's dad. I think Papap's true passion was similar to me. Like he made things happen. I think horses were just one of those things.
Right. Golf
was another one of his passions. He designed mini golf courses. Like my dad still runs the one he built, but he designed mini golf courses for lots of other people in different places. He was the true entrepreneur in the family. Like he opened a chain of video rental stores back in the day. We had 3 video stores, A to Z Video, when I was like in elementary school. Mm-hmm. And that fell through when DVDs came around.
Right.
So I think my grandfather was the true entrepreneur. My dad just saw an opportunity to enter the business that my grandfather had built and have a really nice lifestyle with that, where he worked in the business and did that and allowed himself to have some freedom to pursue his hobbies with sailing and cruising and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I forget your question. Why are my hobbies my work? It wasn't a choice. I am the laziest person you've ever met when there's things I have to do that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
If there's something I want to do, I am going to do it, no matter what. Yeah. And I'm very lucky that the thing I want to do most of all, this travel, adventure, sailing, this stuff, there is a business case for. Like I can create, there is a market for that. I can steer that into something that actually creates a living. I don't know what it would have been if my real passion was something not marketable. Right. I don't know what I would do.
Right.
But I'm very lucky in that. And so it wasn't ever a conscious choice. It was just, how can I figure out how to make this work?
Yeah.
Because this is what I really want to do. I mean, even to the point where like we live on this farm now, and I just freaking hate cutting the grass. So we have a robot lawnmower that cuts the grass around the house, and I pay a guy to cut the grass around the barns, like $40 a week, because I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. There's certain things I just am not going to do, and that's that's just the way I am.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you too, like, what have you? I mean, this is a big question, but what have you learned about yourself from running this business? Like, or I guess, I don't know, over like the last 10 years, like what are some big things you feel like you've learned about yourself through 59 North?
Oh man. One we touched on already, that I actually enjoy being around people way more than I thought I did. That's probably the single biggest thing I've learned about me as a person. I thought living where we live, isolated out here in the countryside, as beautiful as it is, I thought that would be a chance for me to recharge between these intense trips with people and all the rest. Yeah. And actually, I need the opposite. It's the opposite of that. I need to come home to community. That's what I need to recharge, because when I'm with people on the boat, because it's like this hierarchy where I'm responsible, that's so much pressure and so much stress that it's not the same thing. Yeah. I need to be around people where there's no hierarchy, where I'm just part of a group and just anonymous and have my friends and do whatever. Mm-hmm. So that's been I think the thing I learned the most through this whole mental health journey that I've talked about a lot is actually, for me to be at my best, I still need to be alone. I still need my alone time now and then, but in doses, not for weeks at a time like I thought. Yeah. That was a big surprise.
What do you think you've learned about yourself as a leader?
What have I learned about myself as a leader? I guess if I change the question slightly, what I've learned about leadership is there's different ways to go about it. Like, I think you can maybe speak to this more than me, but I think, for example, Chris and I are both very good skippers, but I think we do it in very different ways. Mm-hmm. I'm a very empathetic leader, and I like that, and I think there's a space for that. And I think Chris I've never sailed with Chris. My assumption of Chris is that he's just a lot more practical and very black and white.
Very practical, yeah.
So I think there's places for both of that. What I've learned about myself more specifically is, I guess, to trust my gut. I've always said that and I've always felt that, but there's been times, particularly when I was like at my most depressed, where I remember talking to my therapist about this, where I felt like I had a gut feeling, but I couldn't trust it, or I couldn't trust my gut. And actually what I discovered was I did have a gut feeling. I needed to trust it. Yeah.
But that's so interesting and I think you talk more about depression than anxiety, but like, I definitely struggle with anxiety, and sometimes you can't trust it. Like, there's a voice you can trust, and there's a gut feeling you can trust, but then there's also like the negative the negative voice in your head, or the anxious voice that's like, for me, it's often self-doubt, and I don't know exactly what it is for you, but like, how do you differentiate between like, that's my gut feeling I trust, and like, that's the voice in my head that is not as trustworthy?
I don't know that I've figured that out yet. I think I felt the same thing in this just recently when we did Gaultland Run on Spica. Yeah. I am just like, am I just being a giant pussy for not wanting to be here? Or am I actually making a decision based on a real risk? Yeah. And I'm still not I'm still not sure. I'd actually love, I posted about this on the quarterdeck a few days ago, and everybody sort of unanimously agrees that I made the right decision. And I would really like someone that is like a racing sailor, or somebody to just be like, no, you actually were a pussy, and here's why. Yeah. I kind of wish, because like everybody looks to me as like, I know what I'm talking about, all this, that's all great. I think I do for the most part, and I do think I made the right call. Yeah. But I just wish someone would argue against me, so I could get another perspective.
Totally. Those calls are so hard. I had that the other day on a trip, and I called Nikki, and basically it was just like a shitty, rainy, windy day, and there were thunderstorms in the forecast, and it was just going to be like a really gross day to go sailing. And I had a brand new crew on board, and I was just feeling like, why risk it and make everyone miserable, and like maybe break something, or like I was just sort of feeling nervous about like going out into shitty conditions on purpose when we didn't really have to, because we didn't have anywhere to go, or maybe in the Gotland Runt too. It's like, we don't have to do this. We don't have to. And you guys were in worse conditions than what I was in. But she did push me. She was like, go out, have a miserable rainy sail, and like, you'll feel better, you know, and like, as long as it's not dangerous. But like, yeah, so I like waited for the wind to calm down, and we went and got rained on, and it was fine. But like, it is those decisions, I don't know, it is hard to
I
make
have a
those
thought
calls.
now, just thinking about this as you're talking. I think for me, I'm confident in my gut feeling in that moment actually started a week before, because I knew the boat wasn't ready. I didn't trust the boat. I fundamentally trusted the boat in normal conditions.
Yeah.
Did not trust the boat in those conditions, and I was like, not doing this.
Right.
If I had trusted the boat, I would have been okay with being like, you know what, we're just going to be miserable for a while.
Yeah.
That's fine. But I also think, I don't think they're two separate feelings. I think that's, you know, maybe we are more conservative than Nikki, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like, what are we trying to prove? What are we trying to prove to anybody? Like,
totally. And
maybe
that's something to watch out
maybe-
for. Like, if you're trying to like, that's when it gets dangerous. And I don't think I fall into this side of the coin. I think I'm pretty conservative and cautious, but like, yeah, if I'm only doing it to like prove that I'm tough or whatever, like, that's not the move. Like,
and I think you're going to be attracted. I mean, people are going to be attracted to that. Like-minded people are going to be attracted to that, and therefore they're not going to question your decision, because that's why they're with you in the first place.
exactly. Yeah.
So I kind of think that actually there probably isn't two different feelings you're talking about. I know what you mean, the sort of self-doubt and all the rest. I get that, but that's all part of what creates that gut feeling. And
Yeah.
I think you'll gradually grow out of that as you get more and more experience. This is your first year doing it. If I can give you advice, I mean, just for me, I always, from the beginning of 59 North, I would get seasick like the first day of the trip, not puking seasick, but just feel like really bad and have to go down and nap. I mean, you know, sailing with me,
Yeah.
that I would always, as soon as we're offshore and everything's good, okay, Emma, you got first watch, I'm going down, and I'd sleep and it'd be fine. But that's gotten progressively, like, that doesn't really exist anymore. I don't get those feelings. I don't get that feeling anymore. I'm much more comfortable with whatever and happy to just, and I don't get those nerves. I still get nervous, but I don't get the same way I used to get before.
Yeah.
So I think that'll you'll grow out of that as well as you get experience. But I think, I don't know. I think what I learned is you got to trust your gut feeling. That's all you have. Like, if you start questioning that, people like you and me that are very emotionally tuned in to stuff like that, if you lose faith in that, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I think that's true. Yeah. And there's times when you have to push through the like, and this isn't necessarily gut feeling, but the like, you know, nerves at the beginning of a trip, or like the like, you know, you have to go out sailing in shitty conditions and just have to do, you know, like there's certain things to push through, or self-doubt or whatever. Like, if I listened to every single thought that I have, I probably wouldn't leave the house, you know? Like, I feel like,
Yeah, totally.
but yeah. Okay. We're getting, up on an hour. How much time do you have?
I'm good. I got
Cool.
another, I got plenty of time.
Cool.
Plenty of time.
I want to talk about how
I'm enjoying this. This is fun.
Yeah, me too. I want to talk about how, I guess, like, does it feel like you've been running this business for a decade?
No, but yes, like both. Like, yes and no. Yes, it feels like this is all I've ever done forever in one way, but also no, it doesn't feel like we're 10 years into it.
Do you feel like you're still like do you still feel like you still are surprised by things with it, or like does it still feel real interesting to you running the business?
Oh yes, I love it.
Yeah.
I love every aspect. I love all aspects of it. It's super fun. It keeps me interested. It's like so much so that we're getting to this before the work-life separation thing. I'm realizing now that the reason like the quarterdeck exists and the podcast exists and all this stuff is because like this is what I did in the evenings. I'd get on the computer and be creative and just come up with stuff. And now that I have such a limited window in order to do all this stuff now, I'm really having to figure out what it is I really want to focus my time on, because I don't have time. I don't have time to do everything anymore. And B, what am I going to do in those now sort of hours reserved for life? What am I going to do?
Right.
What do I want to do with Axel? Like when I pick him up today, how are we going to spend the evening? What are we going to do that I can do with him? Because I never had to think about that before. I could just follow whatever rabbit hole I went down with this creative stuff that I've been doing. So that's a bit different. But generally speaking, I love everything. I hate the business admin side of it. I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate it. I spent my whole morning categorizing freaking receipts today.
Oh my God.
It's like
I know.
I had to do it for the return.
Yeah.
I was backlog from April. It took me like 2 hours this morning to get through that. I hate all that.
I'm
I
so not
hate
surprised,
the
yeah.
financial stuff. I have a phone call tomorrow with our accountants to go over the year-end stuff from last year. I absolutely hate that stuff. I am definitely the big picture creative. I want to be in charge of the big picture, and I want to plan where we're going and how we're doing that. I hate all the detail stuff. I just hate it.
Do you feel like as the business has grown, do you feel like you're doing more of the stuff you want to be doing or less of the stuff you want to be doing?
Less, and I'm very conscious of that. Definitely less. And I need to figure out how to stop that because, again, what the heck's the point? I mean, it's so cool. When we hired, you helped with this, when we hired for that admin position that Laura now does, we had like 60 applicants, and Laura immediately stood out because her answer to the question, how would you help make 59 North better, was literally, I will do the things that you don't want to do so you can spend time doing more productive things. I was like, you are hired 100%.
Didn't we almost hire Adam for that position? But
yes,
then we were
talked
like,
about
wait,
this
Adam,
last week.
Adam is like, he's organized, but he's also like big ideas and creative, and like he's a little too close to you in his skill set.
We interviewed him. I was like, Adam, listen, I will give you this job, but you're gonna hate it. Like you're not gonna like this. I said you should please just voluntarily step aside because you're gonna hate it. And then lo and behold, we had the perfect job for Adam, and now he's in his element. Yeah,
exactly. But
and he's too much like me in a way because we were on Falcon last week, and he's got all these ideas for stuff. He's like, we can do this with the table, and we do this with a four-peak. I was like, look, I need you to just maintain the boat. We'll do one fun project a year because I want to keep you motivated, but chill out. But I get it. I'm like exactly the same way.
Yeah. So. Do you think like, I don't know, what have you learned from like, when you hired me in 2019, the business was sort of just in the beginning of the growth phase of like second boat staff. Like I was, one of the first people or the first person to like have a full-time job with you guys, and
the first.
Yeah. What have you learned? Like, I don't know, about either yourself as an employer or as a boss, even though I know that's not your favorite place to be all the time, or like, what have you learned from the process of like hiring people and having them work for you?
What I care about more than anything else is a person's character and a person's kind of personality. And that's, I think, actually been a problem sometimes because you end up doing stuff. You end up giving people jobs that they're not suited for. I don't think I have a good example, but I think I've gone maybe too far in like, I just want to work with my friends kind of thing. Not that I'm just hiring my friends, but I'm becoming friends with the people that we hire. And I think, I don't know, I think it's still I think it's still for the better, I guess. But I guess what I've learned is you got to have, I mean, Adam's a perfect example of somebody who is so like equally passionate and just committed. And I love that. Like he is such a part of 59 North that he just lives and breathes it. And I love that. And I want to make sure that he's rewarded for that. Yeah. That sort of like loyalty, but not blind loyalty. Like the kind of,
we're not starting a cult here.
No, but we kind of are. A little bit. Like just it's so cliched now. It's hard to even talk about this because now with sort of in corporate world anyway, everyone's sort of taking employee empowerment back and all this stuff, which I agree with in that space. I'm trying to not be corporate, and I think we ask a lot of our people, and the whole people make fun of that now. Oh, we're a family and da 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 da. It's like, I think that's actually bullshit in the corporate world. But I do think there's a place for it when you get people that are passionate and are doing what they would do anyway, even if it wasn't paid. And I think everybody that works for 59 North right now, I think would say that they would do this anyway. And it's just a bonus that we're all getting paid. So, and
totally.
not very much.
Yeah.
So I think, and I also think that trying to set the example, like in the industry of actually paying people, because there are a lot of people that would actually do it for free.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of businesses whose whole business plan, competitors to ours, that use that.
Yeah.
And
they take such advantage of that.
Take advantage of people. And I freaking hate that. I hate that.
Well, that's part of working for you guys, for me, was like, I couldn't afford to work for free, and I'd been working as, summer jobs for long enough that I knew I shouldn't work for free. But I did want to do this kind of thing so desperately that like, I probably would have done it for free if that was the only choice I had, I was so, and to find a place that like, wasn't a big corporation, paid an amount that I could like live and save some money as a 22-year-old or whatever, like that was huge. We're
lucky that we're based in Sweden and Europe in general, because I think now, I just dawned on me recently, other than Laura, who does admin stuff a few hours a week, I think I'm the only American left in the business. And we don't pay that much, and people that live here in Europe, especially, that don't have the same problems with healthcare and education and stuff like that, we can afford to live on a lesser salary. Totally. Which I think is just convenient for us now, because like 59 North's never gonna, we'll be profitable, I hope, but no, the numbers aren't very big. Yeah. So, and I think too, what I've learned is this is another place where I think Chris and I differ. We're in a situation now as a business where we can very easily hire only the best people in the world at what we do for being skippers and mates on the boats. Yeah. And I believe that is the case for skippers for sure. But I think on Falcon, we have this apprentice program, which you were a big part of starting. But then I think even like the mate role, I think there's room to develop people instead of just hiring somebody that is overqualified, not even overqualified. And this is where you get in that tricky situation. It's like, well, somebody that is qualified, you can't say you're not hired because you're overqualified. I would never say that, but I like giving opportunities to people that are working their way up, because there's so few of those. Yeah, and it's the perfect job for that. I mean, it's like you get all of the skills required to be a skipper without having that whole, without having the weight on your shoulders and having to have the license and having to have the miles. But you are like there's a lot asked of you as the mate on those boats, and you're often... you need to sort of have the skipper, the skills of a skipper, but it's the perfect job for that. So I like that aspect of it, the sort of apprenticeship development side of things. I really think that's cool, because I go back to, I've said this before, if such a job existed, let's say John Kretschmer, who I was, inspired me in the first place, if he had bought a second boat and built it up, if he would have been hiring for a mate position, I would have done anything for that. But it didn't exist then. Yeah. And like the only thing that did exist when I was coming up was Clipper, and I wasn't interested in racing. Yeah. I didn't care. And back then Clipper only hired one person. It was just the skipper, and I wasn't qualified. Yeah. So I did sort of have think to build there's a part of it as an employer. I like being able to give those opportunities. I mean, put it this way. This is what has happened. The people that we have hired are the people that come to us, because they're the people that know who we're about, know what the culture is we're trying to build, that want to be a part of it. We've never had to put, at least from the boat on the sailing side, we've never had to put an ad out that, hey, we're hiring skippers and mates. Yeah. Because people come to us. And I'd rather have someone that maybe is less experienced, but more passionate and more committed than somebody that is super experienced but has never heard of 59 North. Right, and like doesn't care, just wants to be there. Like I feel like I've met in the last several years like more and more like career skippers who
who do, yeah, this is their job, and they like go and work on different boats as a skipper, and they get the job done and they do it really well. But like with 59 North and having the crew, our, you know, client crew members on board, like you have to be bought in and you have to be passionate. And it did, like, I remember when you guys bought Ice Bear and were testing the concept of hiring people, like the question was like, could you guys run the business without you and Mia running all the trips? And you know, clearly you can, but yeah, I think that's what's so great about the skippers and mates at 59 North is they are all like bought into the central mission, and they like know you guys, and they know the story, and the company's small enough that like you can get everyone all together in Bergen, you know, and hang out and like, or at the boat show. And I think that like keeps it authentic and makes it so that you're not like a corporation or whatever that's like, yeah, loses the family feeling.
The other hard part of mixing the life and work and having your friends, having the people you work with become your friends is, you know, we've only been doing this for a few years and there's already been a lot of turnover. Like you left, Chris is leaving at the end of this year. Alex feels like he could work for us forever, but he's just had a baby. His wife just had a baby not too long ago. So you just want everything's. What doesn't change is where I sit. Right, I'm the one left. Mia and I are the ones that are still here, and that's hard because like you do get. I am so emotionally invested in everybody that works for us that it is hard when people leave, and it is hard when. It's also hard when, you know, we only have a handful of full-time people now, so we have. Like Emily's a great example. She works, I think she's doing 5 or 6 trips next year. I wish so much that I had enough to give her, hey, just work for us beyond the salary and we'll be a big happy family. I just don't have that much work. I only have there's only so much, and that's hard too. And it's hard when you get emotionally involved in it. But I wouldn't trade that, and I think that's the reason we're successful. I think we're successful because of that emotion, not in spite of it.
Yeah, I guess like, and we should wrap up soon, but I wanted to ask you, like, as the company's grown, as it's gotten bigger than just you and Mia on Eastbjorn, what has been, like, what have you gained from that? Like, what's been good about the growth of the company?
Freedom. So I am in the situation now where I can step back. I don't have to do 8 weeks on the boat. I can do 3 or 4 at a time. And that was the whole point. We said because we can't run. Mia and I can't do everything forever. Like what we have now would not work. So that's what I've gained is the ability to choose how I want to spend my time. And if I choose I want to spend more time at work now and away from the family, I can do that. I don't really want to right now, but I still can. If I don't want to, if I don't sail at all, I think I need to sail a little bit because I don't think the business can afford me not to sail at all. But I wouldn't want to not sail either. But that's what I've gained. That's what we've gained is the ability to choose. And I think that's why we keep talking about Chris. Chris has got a rotational contract with Skip Novak to work on Vincent of Antarctica, but it's much less time at sea. A big part of that is he gets to be ashore in South Africa managing the maintenance program, the refit program, and live with Sophie and Xander, their son. So that's where, even though we've tried to create a business where people can have families and spend time on the boat and go home, it's still a lot. It's still a lot for Chris, who was full-time. He sailed a lot this year and last year. And I have flexibility at the top of the pyramid that he doesn't have. So I'm super happy for him that he's now been able to create that flexibility while still being an employee for someone else and just being able to separate that work and life. Whereas, I can't blame him because I have that flexibility. That's literally what I'm working on now. Right. So that's probably the biggest thing we've gained is the ability to do that. And I read another quote the other day that said something about like the best definition of success is being able to define how you spend your time. It's a pretty simple way to put it, and I kind of like that.
No, I love that. I feel like that's something I think about a lot. And it's sort of part of the reason I got into this work. But then sometimes you look around and you're like, wait, I don't have, the freedom I imagined or which.
Well, the equation breaks down.
But
the second you don't want to be on the boat, that's the second the whole thing crumbles because it's a lot of your time.
Yeah.
And I'm still in the position now where I do still want to be on the boat. I still really enjoy that. It's obviously not the same that Mia and I don't get to do it together anymore. It feels a little more like work, but I still love it. And the second that I don't love that, then the whole thing crumbles.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we don't have a business, but...
Have you had moments of that, of not loving it and not wanting to be on the boat?
Never that lasted. I mean, I always joke the first few days at sea, always like, what the hell? Why did I decide to do this?
I should sell the boat.
But that always goes away. I've never ever have I come home from a trip being like, well, I never want to do that again.
Yeah.
No,
What do you think? What do you think you've lost in the growth of the business?
A life, like a life outside of, like I just said, I'm having to create that now from scratch. I have no life that's not work. The little bit I have is so sporadic. I'm starting to build a life here in Sweden that I mentioned to you before. But like my friend, I see my best friends I see a few times a year, if that. Yeah. And those are such, like, the boat show is, I think it's such a big event for me, because it's that one time a year I get to see like all my favorite people in the world in the same place, and it's so fleeting. Yeah. So and intense. that's what I've lost. That sounds overly dramatic. It's not like I'm happy with my life, but I don't have that life where I don't have like a daily routine. I don't have things I do on the weekends with my friends. I have the gym. I have that. That's become the best routine. I was there this morning, and I really like that. But that's an hour or two of my day, 4 times a week. But that's a really big sacrifice.
What do you think? If you like imagine like what in a year, like having a life or whatever that means, like what does that look like or feel like?
I'm still brainstorming that. I'm still daydreaming about that. I mean, we have Spica here. I think I'd really like to schedule my time on Falcon so that I can be home here in the summer now. Yeah. And actually spend a lot more time on Spica. I can do trips here. I can sail with Axel. Mia and I did a really fun cruise with Axel, the 3 of us, for a week. Yeah. And he loved it. And it was great. It was so mellow. It was so nice. Okay. So being able to do that, like make that our summer routine. And I think too that it's been occurred to me, like right now in July, the entire country of Sweden is just not working. Yeah. It's just how it is. Everyone's on vacation for the month of July. That's just how the culture is. The culture's built around that. Even to the point where, like, I went to the post office today to pick up a package, and they're like, "Oh, summer hours. We're only open for an hour in the morning." It's like, okay. And I actually think, as much as I hate to admit this, I actually think I'm just gonna have to accept that and buy into it. And actually, maybe it's just that me and I just have to, because like Axel's at school today. He's the only kid at school. It's him and one of the teachers. Everyone else is gone. It's like it's kind of sad. You walk in there and all like the kids have their little stations with their jackets and stuff. It's a ghost town. It's empty. And I'm just like, all right, maybe we just need to like embrace this culture and just figure out a way to set up 59 North so that Mia and I can just disappear in July and spend 4 weeks on Spica with Axel. Right.
You're a Swedish business. You take you were like, we're doing...
Somebody's going to have to be on call when the boats are out. Sure. That's easy enough to do. But how do we set it up so that, people can still make bookings on the website? I don't know, but that seems pretty attainable.
Totally.
So maybe so that's one idea. Another idea Mia and I bounced around is, we're going to, after this Scotland Run thing, we're going to have to spend a lot of money to get Spica into the right shape to do that again. So then we was like, well, man, should we think about selling Spica and buying like a Hallberg Rossi 34, like a more proper cruising boat? But that's, I have to have a boat that's unique and with character. I don't think we're going to do that, but we've talked about it. Yeah. I want to, I talked to my dad the other day about when I grew up as a kid, every day of the week, my dad would work till lunchtime and they'd come home and we'd go down to the river and go water skiing. It's cool. Like, do I want to buy a ski boat here and recreate that for Axel? I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I think though, for I'm hating to admit this because I've always been like, I decide my future. I think I'm going to be a happier person if I start going with the flow a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And just let Axel decide what our life is going to look like, and I live in Sweden. I live here. Let's accept that. What do people do here? I went to have a fika on Sunday with three friends from the gym and their dogs, and I was like, I cannot believe this. Me and Axel went. I'm sitting here at this like countryside cafe, eating like a raspberry cobbler thing and drinking a cup of tea. Like, what the hell? Like, how did I get here? But I'm like, fuck it. I'm just going to enjoy myself.
Yeah, exactly. You might as well enjoy it if it's,
Axel had a blast. There were dogs there. He was running around. And I think actually me learning how to go with the flow a little more is going to make me a happier person.
Yeah.
But I still don't know if I can accept that.
Right. You're like, I mean, you're still going to be creating your I don't know, you're such a, like I was saying, I think you are one of the most like decisive and determined people I know, and I think you're like always going to be carving your path, but yeah, maybe letting go of some control is probably good.
Yeah, but can you be happy? That's the thing. It's like, if my happiness is dependent on me always looking for the next thing, I'm screwed. Like, I'm screwed because I don't have room for the next thing now.
No,
I can't. We can't have a third. We talk about the third boat for 59 North. Like, I can't do anything. I'm at capacity now. So I got to really reconcile with, if that's what makes me happy, then what? Yeah.
Well, and I think you're also like, it's so interesting. I feel like I'm at a point in my life and career where like so many things are I just started my business. Like, so many things are just beginning, but you've now been doing this for a decade. And like, I feel like, yeah, like you're in a way you've sort of made it, but like, there's like a now what feeling, it sounds like.
It's yes. And I don't want it to sound like I don't want to leave this on that note, because actually I am happier than I've ever been right now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but you are always looking for the next thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think now what's happened, I've reached this point where I get down the path of what the next thing is, and then I panic because I don't have time to do it, and then I back off again. So I'm trying to learn to sort of modulate a little bit and just chill. And if I have free time, take the free time instead of trying to fill that free time with the next thing. I'm so wired to do that when I have free. I mean, like I said, that's why the quarter deck exists. That's why this podcast exists, because I had free time and that's how I filled it.
Right.
And I need to now fill my free time with recreational things, because I haven't like, and when is enough enough? Enough is enough now. This is enough. I am happier than I've ever been in 10 years. I mean that 100%. Like, I am at a better place. In more than 10 years. I'm in a better place mentally than I've been since my mom, not even my mom died, since my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer. That's when that's the starting point of like my slow mental decline. Yeah. And I feel like I'm finally back to the person I was before that started. Yeah. And that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. No, I'm so happy for you. And I feel like maybe the fact that you're sort of like, that you're in this like moment of like, oh wait, I can just like relax, or like take my kid water skiing, or, like that is, I think that's probably a sign that you are in a good place, but you don't necessarily know what to do with it yet, Correct.
That's a great way to put it. I'm in a great place. I've got a lot of space. Yeah. What do I do with it?
Wait, I've never had this.
I'm very uncomfortable. I'm very uncomfortable in this sort of empty space. Yeah. So I just need to learn how to get comfortable there. And I think, I think that's going to even make me happier.
Yeah. And like, accept that you've created that for yourself. Like, I don't know, like, yeah.
One example, this is just for the parents out there listening. I think people will appreciate this. Just a specific example of going with the flow. Sometimes Axel goes to bed at 7:30 like a prince, and his bedtime routine is perfect. Other times, he's not tired, and there's nothing you can do to get him to go to sleep or even stay in his room. So Mia and I talked about this. This started a while ago. Like, what do we do in this? And we actually talked to one of his like psychologists, something he gets followed up with because he was premature. And the psychologist's like, well, you have a choice. You can fight it and force him to go to bed, and you guys can have a horrendous evening, or you can just go with the flow and choose not to fight over that. So last night was one of those nights where he went through the whole bedtime routine, climbed in bed. He's like, I'm not tired. I want to go downstairs. And I was like, and all parents will know, like, the moment your kid goes to sleep, it's like, oh my God, I'm free for like an hour now before I have to go to bed. But it's like, all right, I'm not going to get frustrated. Okay, fine, Axel, let's go downstairs. I said, but look, here's the deal. You can stay up as long as you want. I don't care. But I'm watching a movie. You don't have to watch it with me, but we're watching my movie. So we watched Twister last night on TV. And he alternated between climbing up on the couch with me and watching it and then going playing with his toys. And he's like, I want to watch my movie. I was like, no, I told you. We're watching my movie. That's the deal. Yeah. And at 9:30, he fell asleep in my lap. And I got to watch my movie, which was what I was going to do anyway. And we didn't fight. And he went to sleep 2 hours later, but whatever. He still went to sleep and he got off to school today. So that's an example of like, all right, I'm not going to fight this. I'm just going to go with the flow. And this is how it's going to be. And I had a great night with him. So like, that's just one specific example of that, but that works.
Yeah, that's so great. The last question I want to ask you is, I don't know, didn't really figure out how to word it, but like, how often do you feel like it hits you that you've like followed your dream and built this company that's now 10 years old? And sort of like how often does that hit you?
Not often enough, but when it hits the hardest and in the hardest as in the best way is like in Bergen last week when you get the whole team together and everybody's there. It's like, holy shit, look at what we've done. Like this is, and I say we as in all of us, like not just Mia and me. Like it is such a cool thing. It is such a cool thing. And I even said to Adam in August, I was like, guys, like when I left, I was like, we have to do this more often. This is so inspiring to get together in person. I said, we got to do this. So we're doing a staff weekend on Falcon in Portugal at the end of the season in last weekend of November. And those are the moments that are truly like, wow, we really have something special here. This is so cool. Look at the people we're surrounded by. Look at this boat we built. Look at this. Look, it's just amazing. And that's when you really are that my sense of like appreciation and thankfulness and like just satisfaction was at an all-time peak last week in Bergen. It was so cool. It was so great. Good.
Well, I'm glad you get that because that's, you deserve that. And it doesn't always come. So I'm glad you guys just had that.
It's like anything else. I'm in it. It's hard to have perspective when you're in it every day to day to day. Mm-hmm. But every once in a while you're reminded like that. And that's what makes it worth it.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you wanted to talk about? Or mention?
No, this has been super cool. I'm very glad that you steered me towards like the actual personal stuff instead of the sailing stuff because I feel like I've told the sailing stories a million times already. So really, really cool. It's fun, and it's a fun. We should do this again in a year.
Totally.
After I figure out what my life is gonna look like and see if I manage to figure it out or not.
Yeah,
but,
it's a process.
No, this was great.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for doing this, Andy. I know we squeezed it in among a bunch of other things, so. Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time. Thanks, Emma.
Yeah. Have fun biking home with Axel.
I will.
This episode was sponsored by The Quarterdeck, 59 North's home port on the internet for all things sailing and seamanship. Go to 59-north.com/quarterdeck to sign up for your 2-week free trial. See you there.
On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 Degrees North and hosted by me, Emma Garshagen, August Sandberg, and Andy Schell. The show is mixed and produced in Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music was written and performed by former podcast guest Cameron Dale. And the outro music that you're hearing now is by our friends at Stormweather Shanty Choir, who have also been on the show. We love hearing from you, so please send us a note at holdfast@59-north.com. And you can also help us out a lot by reviewing the show on iTunes. It really does help. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, hold fast.
And when me money was all gone on liquor and the whores, I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone. Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone. As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said,
last time you was paid up with me, you talked up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more.
once more, once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more. Sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore. Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any whores. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.